main event. We have an excellent speaker today, representative of Knox County, and to introduce him is our very own representative from Knox County, Russ Jensen. Russ?
Well, I actually work for the city and not the county. I do.
Sorry, the city.
But our speaker is somebody I do work with quite a bit. And Colin is the director of the Emergency Management Agency for Knoxville and Knox County, has been for several years now. But he also served his community as a paramedic, firefighter, and a member of the rescue squad. He's a graduate of UT, but he's also got a master's in fire and rescue science from Oklahoma State. I'm going to make sure I got that right. And to be honest with you, he is without doubt one of the smartest people I know, and you all know I don't say that very often. So without further ado, Colin in.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Colin. I really appreciate the opportunity to join you today. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate Shannon and Russ giving me the invitation. But I'll tell you just in just a few minutes what we do in emergency management and what some of the behind-the-scenes stuff looks like on blue sky days like today, when we're preparing for emergencies, but of course also when there is a major emergency or disaster. It's great to see a few familiar faces out there. So here's, I'll start with my best emergency management analogy. If you think of every single agency, department, organization that may have some role to play in a disaster, no matter how big, no matter how small, of course, I'm talking about our first responders, police department, sheriff's office, the 4 fire departments that serve the city of Knoxville and Knox County, the rescue squad, AMR, EMS, folks like the health department, folks like our partners at the Red Cross, other organizations such as, and I hate to name just a few because there's so many I can't name them all, but folks like Team Rubicon, Southern Baptist Disaster Relief, United Methodist on Relief, other government departments, from everyone from public works up to the finance and purchasing department. If all of those are bricks, then emergency management is the mortar that works to build one singular, cohesive, monolithic response structure in order to best serve the needs of the community during a big emergency and during a disaster. So in a nutshell, that's who we are and what we do. So when people ask me what I do, I tell them, oh, I work in emergency management. And they're like, oh, they smile for a second. And then so I feel a little bit of a confused look on their face. Emergency management, what does that mean? I tell them, oh, I do disaster planning. That's like the 2-word answer we'll be talking about. I tell them I do disaster planning. And oh, disaster, okay. Then they get kind of a confused look on their face and disasters. Colin, we don't really have I mean, I watch the news, you hear about like some fires in California, that kind of the occasional hurricane, but we don't really have, I don't think we really have anything like that around here. Well, before you get too far into one of our emergency plans, we tell you, it says exactly what kind of emergencies, what kind of disasters are we talking about, because they do happen here. And I think the public has kind of a short memory. So in the world of emergency management, we kind of put emergencies, disasters into 3 different categories. If you can see the screen on the left, natural disasters or natural hazards, things like tornadoes, things like floods, things like fires. I probably wouldn't have mentioned hurricanes until we kind of came up in this area. Usually don't think of that kind of thing around here, but we do now. We think about, sometimes we'll call them man-made hazards or human-caused hazards. Things that are just kind of a hazard of living in the modern world that we live in. So things like utility outages or communications outages can be significant disasters. Can you imagine if people couldn't get to Facebook? That would be, I'm not sure our young people would survive, but communications accidents, utility outages, chemical spills, that kind of thing. And of course, we also have to think about, unfortunately, things like terrorism as well. So those are the types of hazards that we plan to prepare for. And we do have a significant history of disasters. Like I said, I think the public tends to have a short memory, but here are some of the things that have happened in Knox County in the past. So since 1963, when federally declared disasters became a thing, we've had 15 federal disaster declarations for disasters that have affected Knox County. And 2/3 of those have been since the year 2000. In other words, that's a short way of saying that much like the rest of the country, disasters here are happening more frequently, and they're also much more expensive and complex to manage. So here's just a few pictures. In fact, not even all of these, a lot of these are not even federally declared disasters. They didn't rise to that level. So I'll just name a couple of things that you're seeing here. In the upper left, that's a picture of the McClung warehouse fire from downtown. That was quite a few years ago now. The lower left, I think that was the February 2011 flood. Although February 2019, I'm sure you all remember I think that's the worst flooding that we've had in our community. The picture on the center at the bottom, that's the blizzard of '93. We still talk about that one. What else on the lower right, the center picture there where you see all the dark smoke, that was the recycling center fire in North Knoxville a few years ago. And the lower right is a train derailment. I think that was 2002 in Housing Farragut. That's certainly one of the bigger disasters that affect our community. If you see the white haze there, that's not smoke. That's acid vapor. The main chemical we were concerned about was oleum, which is the concentrated sulfuric acid that was leaking from the rail car that derailed there. So again, that's just to remind folks and give you a picture, kind of an overview of some of the major emergencies and disasters that have impacted our community here over the recent past. And so here's another list of some of the emergencies that we have been involved with in our role in emergency management. And again, it's a pretty busy, it's a pretty varied list, and it's kind of covers a lot of territory. Again, our police department, fire department, rescue squad, ambulance service, they do a great job. You know, every day they respond to car accidents, heart attacks, that kind of thing. But we really only get involved when it's a major emergency or disaster. And here's a few of the ones that we have been involved in. Again, just to name a few. If you remember the dynamite incident just a little over a year ago. Again, that was not one that I had on my bingo card. I don't know about you, but it was a pretty big emergency. We worked closely with our friends at the Red Cross to evacuate the nearby neighborhoods, and we appreciate the Red Cross helping provide a shelter for the folks that had to be out of their homes. But most often we deal with natural disasters, things like severe storms. If you remember, I think it was just over 2 years ago, we had a tornado in the Lovell area, caused significant damage to the apartment complex there and displaced a lot of folks. But natural hazards from tornadoes to floods, straight line winds can be almost as destructive as tornadoes, but over a much wider area. So again, this is just an example of some of the types of things that we plan for, prepare for, and actually respond to. Like I said, even though a lot of our community members kind of have a short memory and don't think about these things very much. So here's some of the examples of the type of work that we do. So our day-to-day, we're focused on preparing for disasters. And when we talk about preparing for disaster, we usually mean planning, training, or exercises. We kind of do things in that order. First, we plan. Again, when I say we, I'm never talking about just us in emergency management. Our work is at its essence highly collaborative. So whenever I say we, I really mean us, plus our first responder partners, plus our other nonprofit and community organizations that have a role to play in disaster response. And so some things that we do: planning, training, and exercises to get to, planning is, working together. Although we go into, we spend a lot of time in planning meetings, and, I usually go in with an idea of what the plan should look like, but the tricky part for us is working closely with, again, usually our first responder agencies. It doesn't matter if Colin has a plan that he likes. What matters is that we all agree on what the plan should be, right? And so a lot of our work in meetings are consensus building, and also, even though I think my ideas are pretty great, they're never as good as the ideas that we come up with together as a group. Folks that work for other agencies and have other points of view. So first we plan, and then we train. We have to train our our emergency responders, our partners, basically on what the plan is, and then exercises are how we practice, right? How we practice the plan, and also frankly find flaws in it. I'll give you some examples here in just a minute, but some of the things that we do, we plan, prepare, we provide training for emergency responders. So, excuse me, I'm sorry, some allergies. That time of year. We provide training for our emergency responders. Of course, every emergency response agency provides their own specialized training in what their discipline is, but most of our planning, most of our training is geared towards incident command, incident management, which is the organizational structure that we, along with all of our response agencies, use to coordinate and to manage emergencies. So to give you some examples, we just finished what we call an ICS 400 class just the other day. That's the top level of incident command training for upper level supervisory folks, for first responders, agencies, and things like that. In a couple of weeks, we're training some of our partners on damage assessment. So that's if we have a major emergency here, a disaster, I should say, we have to go out and we have to find all the damage and we have to document it. FEMA has standards for that, and that damage assessment is how we unlock federal aid. We have to kind of use that here, FEMA, here's our proof for how bad the impact was in here in Knoxville. And so based on our damage assessment, may we please have federal assistance for this disaster. We're doing that training coming up soon. Some examples of some exercises. Just the, I guess it was last month now, we've had an exercise in partnership with Dow, the chemical facility, kind of just north of Fort Sanders. That was a great opportunity to for our emergency responders, fire department, police department, particularly our hazmat responders. The average hazmat incident looks like a truck accident on the interstate, perhaps. And so the best case scenario there is that we get the driver of the truck might be able to hand us some shipping papers, but that's about all the information we're going to get. So we had a great opportunity to collaborate with Dow to plan and have an exercise recently. And what's unique there is that they have subject matter experts. They work with chemicals in their processes on site there. But of course, they're the experts on their facility and on the chemicals they work with. And that's something that we really wanted to exercise in the practice. Like I said, usually our hazmat responders, I won't say they're on their own, but it's up to them to figure out what's going on and to solve the problem. But it was kind of a unique aspect to work with Dow, simulating a chemical spill on their property for our first responders to work with their staff to resolve an incident like that. And we also, again, during disaster, we managed the Emergency Operations Center. That's that's where we gather representatives from all of our emergency response agencies, other partners, and other involved. It's kind of the off-site location for information sharing information. Here's in the whole area, teaching an incident command class. The pictures. Just the other. To simulated terrorist attacks here in Knox County, but then there were other simulated terrorist attacks in other counties too. So that added an extra layer of complexity. So we have a lot of terrorism attack, but I like to think we're pretty good at coordinating and managing incidents among our local responders, but having a in our business, we call that a CCTA, complex coordinated terrorist attack, have multiple jurisdictions involved. That added another layer of complexity that we don't get to practice very much. So that's what we did. That's what we did there. So again, our everyday work is disaster preparedness, planning, training, and exercising for emergencies. And so the two layers where we manage emergencies. On scene, we have incident command. And so that is not our job. We are not the incident commanders, but the incident commander is usually an upper level supervisor from the police department or the fire department. And they're in charge of telling emergency responders where to go and what to do. So that happens at the scene. And then where our role is more focused, that is our mobile command truck on the left. We will bring that to the scene, and that becomes the office for the incident commander. It really is kind of literally an office, but with a lot of the beefed up with some communications technology and some other things that emergency responders would need. And then on the right, this is more our territory, the Emergency Operations Center. Our EOC is located in the public safety complex in the former St. Mary's hospital site. We're right upstairs from the fire department, and that room you see is our Emergency Operations Center. And again, that's where we gather representatives from all the organizations that are involved in the emergency response. And our job there is not to tell the boots on the ground where to go and what to do. That's what command does on the scene, but our role is coordination, information sharing, and making sure the incident commander on the scene has all the resources, all the stuff they need. Do they need more firefighters? Do they need more hazmat suits? Whatever they need, we want to take the responsibility for getting all that stuff for them so that they can focus on the job in front of them right at camp. And so we are, again, as the Knoxville, Knox County Emergency Management Agency, we are responsible here. We're a local government. We're responsible to both the city and the county. My position is jointly appointed by the city and county mayors. Occasionally, we will get folks will say, "Oh, you work for FEMA," and we kind of get a little bit insulted by that. We try not to let it show, because most people don't. They don't know, they don't care, but we work for Knoxville, Knox County, right here. We're responsible to the community here locally, but we're also the link up the chain. So whenever an incident gets so big that it's beyond what we can handle with our local resources, we will call TEMA, the Tennessee Emergency Management Agency, and they will assist and help us get state level resources. And then if it's bad enough, then TEMA will call FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and they can help us get national level resources. And of course, really important part of the FEMA is some of the post-disaster assistance, both assistance to community members, and frankly, in a big disaster, they'll help reimburse some of the local government costs for emergency response. And so again, as another example about some of the kind of work that we do, just over a year ago, we were really concerned as the hurricane was kind of moving into the area. In fact, one of the models showed it heading right towards Knoxville right here. Fortunately for us, less fortunately for them, it kind of veered off a little bit to the east and really impacted more of the upper East Tennessee and Western North Carolina areas. And so our Emergency Operations Center was activated prior to the arrival of the hurricane. Again, we were watching it, concerned that it was going to affect our area. As soon as we realized the impact here was minimal, it wasn't zero, but fortunately it wasn't too bad. We shifted gears, and a lot of our focus became assisting our neighbors to the east and to the northeast. So one of our partners, you probably wouldn't have noticed, Sarah. She was the one teaching the class in the slide. She went to Washington County and served as the planning section chief in their emergency operations center for several days. And our other operations officer, Marcus, he took some of our communications equipment up to, I believe it was Parker County, and to help reestablish some of the communications there. Knox County was very involved. Also, Cobb County, they were very severely impacted, particularly with. I saw some pictures from their courthouse, and so many of their records, public record, the notebooks, literally in the basement of the courthouse, and property deeds and that kind of stuff were just destroyed, and that's really tough. But a lot of our Knox County staff members went to assist them with some of their volunteer management efforts and things like that. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that again. So we're lucky to partner with our counterparts across the region. They're, we would expect them to come assist us if the disaster got bad enough, but frankly, we're, as kind of the major metropolitan area and kind of the center of the district, we as in Knox County are frequently asked to assist our partner jurisdictions. So I don't want to get too long-winded here, but I would be happy to answer all of your burning emergency management questions.
What can an average family do to prepare for an emergency? So maybe it's not as much work on you guys when the emergency happens.
Oh, I appreciate that thought, and that's a great question. We encourage everyone to every household to have an emergency plan and an emergency kit. If you want to, I promise I won't give you the 30-minute answer today. I'll give you the 30-second answer. But the Red Cross has some great information on their website. But having a plan for where your family might meet during disaster. You know, I showed you the picture of the train derailment in Farragut that happened on a Sunday morning, and there were people coming home from church. And all of a sudden, there's a friendly police officer saying, "Hey, you can't come down this. It's not safe. You can't come in here." And they said, "Well, why just live right up?" No, sorry, you can't. Not safe. You can't come. So where would if you were away from home, where would your family meet up? And do you have their phone numbers? I don't know anybody's phone numbers anymore. They're all my phone. So do you know the phone numbers that you would need? And of course, having an emergency kit with things like first aid supplies, some food, water. Again, there's a longer list that I won't bore you with, but we encourage all of our community members to be prepared. Frankly, we have seen on a number of occasions where disaster strikes and folks with a few basic preparedness measures would have been okay. It would have been maybe kind of unpleasant, but they'd be okay. But since they didn't have that in place, they end up calling 911. Hey, I need help. Send the fire department. I need to, can someone give me a ride to the Red Cross shelter? I don't know, but some basic things like that can make the lives of your family members much better in the aftermath of an emergency. Did I answer your question? Oh, let me mention one more thing before I forget. We encourage everyone to sign up for Knox County's emergency alert system. That is how, for example, during the dynamite incident, a few of you all may have gotten the emergency alert. We found out, I'll spare you the whole story, but our software that puts out we put emergency alerts into the federal, it's called the IPAW system, Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. It's a federal system. And we found out, even though we put our messages in, the federally managed part of the system didn't work quite as smoothly as we wanted it to. That's a different story. But you should still want to get the alerts when there's an impact near you. So I would encourage every person to go to knoxcounty.org. And in the lower left-hand side of the website, it'll say countywide alerting. And if you click on that, you can sign up to get emergency alerts. Like I said, we don't use it very often. We try to, we want to keep our powder dry, and we don't want to bug you every time there's something going on. But like I said, for the dynamite incident, we sent an alert. We wanted to warn the people right around it that there's an emergency and they need to leave the area for their own safety. All right, sorry.
How do you prepare for like active school shooter? That's something that can affect
That's excuse me. How do we prepare? Is that
how? I mean,
that active shooter has been a hot topic, and like I said, it was Thursday of last week that we had a planning workshop / exercise with a small group of emergency responders to make sure that all of what we wanted our plan to be was all agreeable to the police department, the sheriff's office, the city of Knoxville Fire Department, Rural Metro Fire Department, Seymour Volunteer Fire Department, Carnes Fire Department, AMR Ambulance Service. We got all those folks together and we literally put out a map of the school, and we said, okay, where's the first officer on scene? Where are they going to go? The second officer, where are they? Okay, now the fire director gets here, and we were in the process of updating our plans. I'm sorry for making a short story long. We were in the process of updating our plans, and we had some different ideas. And so we wanted to game it out and make sure that we were really on the same page. We found out, as I hoped, it was a little bit of a terminology difference. It was a terminology difference more than a disagreement on how to respond. So we do stuff like that to smooth these things out. And I was part of, if you're asking what we do, I was a part of a committee about 5 years ago to develop active shooter training for school staff. That has been used around our region, and we just recently, the committee reconvened over the last several months to update that. Unfortunately, I don't even want to say this out loud, but one of the reasons that we update our plans frequently, we never stop working on our plans. A lot of that's due to lessons learned. Unfortunately, there have been school shootings over the last several years across the country, and they're absolutely horrific, but we would be a little irresponsible if we did not take lessons learned from that to improve what our response would be here.
Oh, man, I've just been down in school for about 6 years, but I mean, I know that active shoot and, you know, wet and stuff like that happen like schools. And one thing I noticed as a parent is a parent's first response was like, I'm gonna go to school and get my kid. And I always thought the parents need a plan of where they should be going, which is not to the school. The last place we may need to, if there's a shooter or whatever. But no one ever gave parents any plan on what they should be doing if that was going on in the school. And I saw over and over again, parents on the Facebook page, I'm driving to the school to get my kid during an active shooting. And I'm like, that's.
Yes, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
And I'm not a parent, but I also completely understand where if you have a concern, your first instinct is going to be to get hold of your child and make sure they're safe. But you know, that school, if there is an incident going on, that school's going to be locked down. The parents are not going to be let. And I'll defer. We are fortunate that here we have not only Knox County School Security, they have their own armed security force, but also, and this may not apply to the elementary schools, but they also have school resource officers from the Knoxville City, Knoxville Police Department, and the Knox County Sheriff's Office. So we're maybe in better shape than some other communities, but also Knox County School Security, they got security officers, but they also have their own emergency manager. So we work closely with them, but they have their own version of Colin that's working, that spends all their time working on exactly those problems. I don't know if I answered your question.
I just always thought that every school should know if there's a disaster. You know, it could even be a chemical school sort of thing. Don't go to school, meet at XYZ's church, which is 2 blocks away or something.
Yes, I do know that every school is supposed to have a nearby evacuation location that they can walk the students to, but then also a location a bit further away if they need to get further to safety, where they would, you know, presumably have to transport their students to. Sorry.
I just was gonna add to that, last Friday, this is kind of timely, we had Officer Peoples from KPD come out from our organization, do active shooter training. I would just highly recommend, you all think about doing that for your businesses and, local organizations. I think it was really eye-opening, and staff learned a lot from that. It's free, it's a free resource, so just wanted to.
Yeah, that's great. And as far as I know, both the city police department and the county sheriff's office are having.
Can you touch on the use of drones?
Sure. Use of drones. That's an exciting thing for emergency response, a technology that I think is still in its infancy. I can tell you that city police department, as well as the county sheriff's office, have drones that they use for responding to emergency. And we hear more and more about the new applications for that to be used. So a few things that's of interest to us. We've seen drones used, like I said, for damage assessment, quick, accurate damage assessment. Like I said, that's key for us for locally putting help where we need it, but also for getting federal aid when we need it. And so there's drone technology that, for example, you tell your drone, okay, fly back and forth, and in the bad old days, you could compare that image to the before image, you know, satellite imagery, that kind of stuff, and tell. But more and more, you know, we're having conversations. I'm not going to tell you it's ready for prime time yet. If you want to, about AI, And, can AI take a picture of a damaged house and appropriately categorize it, classify it according to FEMA standards, in order to essentially do that for us? We've seen drones used, for example, like hazmat incidents. It's, say other emergencies aren't risky, but that's a pretty risky one when there's chemicals, maybe even chemicals that are reacting. Maybe you don't even know what the chemicals are, and you're going to ask a firefighter to put on a plastic suit and run up there and check it out. It's much safer to use a drone and send a drone in and get a look at it. If you have to, we want to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, but if you have to throw that drone in the trash afterwards, if you expose it to chemicals, that's a whole lot cheaper than, taking a risk with an emergency responder's life. And there's more emergency technology, emerging technology as far as that goes, that we could talk about all day. But we won't. Russ, is there anything specific you want to hear about?
No. I think we have one last question.
Sure. This may be more of like a budgetary question, but I'm just thinking, how does emergency management in collaboration with all the other resources we have around here, how do you reconcile the need for certain things, certain tools that are definitely needed? And I'm just thinking in my head like a snowstorm. We absolutely need plows, but we don't necessarily need them every year, or we may only need them once a year. So we can't have 5 dozen plow trucks just sitting around collecting rust, but yet when we need them, we need them. So how do you reconcile that and work with other agencies? How does all that work?
That's a great question, and something we think about and kind of worry about a lot. A lot of the work of emergency management is thinking about working out how to get resources from one place to another. Because for exactly that reason, not every community has everything they would need during disaster. And don't tell my boss that I said this. Maybe they shouldn't have everything under the sun, right? That's the taxpayers probably can't afford that. So yes, we have for example, a great fire mutual aid system. I'll give you one example. When we had the absolutely horrific Gatlinburg fires in 2016, me and my partner at the time, we spent a week up there in Gatlinburg with that fire. Knoxville firefighters spent days and days and days up there. Knox County Fire Departments, I think they had over 100 fire departments responding. For exactly that reason, you can't build for the absolute worst case scenario. Nobody can afford that. And so it is, some judgment. It is Colin going to his bosses at the city county building saying, hey, I'd really like some money to do this. We really need it if there's a disaster. And sometimes they fund it and sometimes they don't. And I understand that because that's competing with other needs that are like very apparent right now today. And that's a tough, and I don't know the answer, but it's definitely an issue that we struggle with.
That'd be great, thank you. Colin, it's our tradition to donate a book to a library on your behalf. If you'll sign this, we'll donate on your behalf to East Knox Elementary School. And today it's Everything's Wrong with the Barrel. Good job, Barrel. Sorry. I'd like to thank everyone, every member for coming, and I'd like to thank your guests for coming and joining us too. Don't forget, next week we're going to be at the Knoxville Museum of Art, the beautiful KMA. Our speaker has been arranged by Vittorio Bonamazzi, our favorite nuclear physicist, and our speaker is a veteran. It is Sean Wise.